Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, it's the Journalists Roundtable. We'll look at the week's top stories, including new developments regarding the threat to food stamp benefits and the government shutdown. The Journalists Roundtable is next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your public television station.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. It's Friday, and that means it's time for the Journalists Roundtable. And joining us tonight, Jim Small from the Arizona Mirror, Jeremy Duda from Axios Phoenix, and Wayne Schutsky from KJZZ Radio. Panel, thank you so much for joining us. Wayne, you're right over there, right?
Okay. I'm here.
We want to make sure we got you there. We're not going to start with, let's go ahead and start with you, Wayne, since you didn't get your profile and your close-up there. Today's news, the lawsuits against, the SNAP funding, the funding off the cliff, and all the 9 yards is going to happen tomorrow. It sounds like the judges have made a decision.
Yeah, they're starting to see some movement on that. Now, it's not really going to happen until Monday, but they basically said that the states, the cities that are suing were correct in their interpretation that there's this contingency fund available for emergency situations with SNAP where there's not the money there to cover these food stamps, which we have right now because of the government shutdown. Trump administration had said we can't tap into those funds. I'm not going to get into the specific reasons, but they basically said that this situation doesn't apply. The judge said, no, I think you're wrong.
Yeah, and that's basically what Attorney General May said when she joined the 24 others.
Yeah, and I think we need to get like a whiteboard up here so we can list off every one of the lawsuits. This is late 20-something, I think.
29, I believe.
29, all right.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that was, she very enthusiastically joined that. This is a major issue for her and everyone, Democratic attorneys general and governors all over the country. That this is, I think, 42 million people around the country rely on SNAP benefits. About 900,000 here in Arizona. This is a major issue. There's a lot of concerns from folks. I think a lot of folks who probably until this week did not realize this was about to happen. And, it is great for them that this is not going to be interrupted. I think we're starting to see people rallying to figure out how to get food, how to get benefits, how to replace this, and for how long is that going to happen? I think that's still a question, given the amount of the contingency funds we have here.
The lawsuit that May signed off on and was part of, and her comments regarding the lawsuit, she calls the president's actions deliberate, illegal, and inhumane choice, unnecessary and cruel. And she basically went after him, as she does in most of these lawsuits. But she went after them. But the judges are basically saying, you got a point there with that contingency fund business.
Well, yeah, and the judges in both cases, but very pointedly in the state case, which is in Massachusetts, pointed out that said, look, this contingency fund was created by Congress, and money was put into it by Congress, and it's specifically it's pretty explicit that it says, like, if there is no regular appropriation, then you are to tap into this money. It wasn't really permissive. It was a shall really in the law, and the Trump administration looked at it and decided that all of the past shutdowns, the past 2 or 3 where this contingency fund has existed, where the SNAP benefits have not been interrupted because they've used the contingency fund, this case was somehow different, and they decided that, oh no, it would be illegal for us to tap into this money that Congress put here for this exact reason. Court said, no, of course it's not. I think in reality what's going on is you have the Trump administration trying to arm twist Democrats in the U.S. Senate into voting for the funding program for the funding bill to reopen the government, with the idea being that if they're going to apply pain to programs that Democrats broadly support, then and the people that use those programs, and if they force people to go hungry and not have food, then Democrats are more likely to crack, and they're going to be able to peel off a few more votes and reopen the government without having to negotiate with Democrats.
Is there any arm twisting on the Republicans who are part of all of this? I mean, last I checked, Republicans had control of the House, control of the Senate, and obviously the White House. I mean, if you keep your caucus, this doesn't happen. Yeah,
and that's kind of the argument Mays has made. She said that at the press conference. Basically, they control all levers of government, so Democrats aren't to blame for this. Now, on the other side, you need the 60 votes in the Senate currently to pass this spending plan, so they do need Democrats on board. So it's kind of this back and forth blame game, and I think both sides, as Jim alluded to, are are banking that the other side is going to take the blame for whatever pain the American people are feeling, and that's kind of a gambit going into an election year, and it could really play next year voters.
Well, and I think we might find out how much blame and how much arm twisting there's going to be in probably a couple of weeks, because this $5.5 billion in contingency funds, that isn't even enough for a full month of these benefits, which I think is 9-point-something billion nationwide. So this isn't going to last as much as the money that Governor Hobbs kind of moved over for this at the state level. The federal level, this isn't going to last forever. It's not going to last the full month, and who knows how long this shutdown is going to continue. This still may be something that can bring people to the table a couple of weeks from now.
Well, and I do think it's clear. I mean, yes, it is kind of a political gamble, right, for going out and doing this. But I think that we're seeing poll numbers that show very clearly that the public looks at this and goes, wait a second, Republicans are in charge. This is on their watch. This is their fault. I mean, 2-1, I think, were a couple of these national polls that came out that people are blaming Republicans because, as you said, Ted, they control the White House and both chambers of Congress. And people look at that and go, well, why can't you get something done? Why can't you figure out a way, to keep the government open? This really, the buck stops with the majority party.
And it's also important to note that people are probably still going to feel some pain regardless of this court ruling. It basically said on Monday the Trump administration has to say whether they can tap into that contingency fund or even additional funds to cover the full amount. As Jeremy alluded to, the contingency fund is only a part of that. And it's not like once they say yes, the money just immediately flows to the states and goes to these food stamps. There's a lot of process that goes into that, so people are probably going to go a week or so without their money anyway.
And that takes us to Jeremy, Governor Hobbs. And this week, before this the two rulings today, Governor Hobbs did address the food stamp, the funding cliff, basically released, $1.8 million. That's a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money when it comes to food stamps.
To us, that's a lot of money.
Yes.
For a program that costs $150 million a month at the state level, not so much. And Governor Hobbs herself referred to this yesterday as a drop in the bucket and said, was urging, President Trump to release these contingency funds and use those. So that's something that will help. There's some other, smaller amounts of money that are going to help. This is federal money, and the governor says there's no state money that we have available to do, or at least nothing that can be released without legislative approval, which, we have a rainy day fund, which I think is, $1.6 billion or so at this point. You have other state funds can be used, but that would require, a special session, legislative approval. Legislature, of course, controlled by Republicans, not a lot of appetite to come back and do this there. So, the governor was trying to find, ways that the state can help, but there's really, especially outside of session and outside of some sort of legislative agreement, there's only so much that can be done.
Yeah, $1.8 million in unspent COVID relief funds. I think $1.5 going to food banks, and food banks, we had some food banks on this week. They're trying their best to gear up for this. How much of a difference is it? Could this be the bridge between Saturday and whenever the courts basically say you got to open up the pipe again?
I mean, it's not nothing, but it's obviously, like the governor said, drop in the bucket. I mean, you're looking at this as about 1% of what the state would normally be allocated for the SNAP benefits, and the money's not going directly. Very little of the money is going directly to people. I think people with EBT cards are going to get vouchers for $30 to spend on some fresh produce at select retailers, which is, again, not nothing. But it doesn't replace the $300 or so average I think that people get in Arizona for this per month, and that's you can't make that up with $30 and certainly with a lot of people crowding into food banks with such increased demand, it's going to be a struggle, and they're already facing cutbacks themselves from the Trump administration, which cut a couple of million pounds worth of food from food banks earlier this year suddenly without any warning. This is kind of a perfect storm in a lot of ways for the housing, for the affordability crisis that people in Arizona and across the country are facing.
Why did the governor do what she did when she did? Some would say she waited kind of long for this.
Yeah, I think one of her comments was she thought people knew about it, which there has been a lot of reporting on the potential for SNAP to go unfunded, but other than that, it's kind of hard to say. I mean, on the Attorney General side, they kind of had to wait for these directions to come down to sue over it. But from the governor's side, it does seem like maybe there could have been more of like a PR campaign, at least to get people informed about what was happening. But again, in terms of the actual action she actually took, without legislative approval, as Jeremy said, there's just not that much money there. And we've seen other Republican-led legislatures, Louisiana, for instance, tap into their rainy day funds, but Senate President told me, and House Speaker said the same thing. Basically, the only way they're going to get this money is if our Democratic senators vote to reopen the government.
But on the PR front, I do not understand why Hobbs did not demand that Republicans do this and point to Louisiana and point to other states, or even, heck, call them into special session just to force them to say, no, we're not going to do this. It seems, from an outside perspective, like a really easy kind of some low-hanging fruit and some political points to score for a candidate who is going to be running into a very competitive race next year. And a chance to really just, kind of hit the Republican-led legislature like a piñata. And I don't know why they didn't do that. I mean, that's what Chris Mays was pushing for. And she said, we talked with the governor's office. We urged them to do this, and they rebuffed us and said, no, we're not interested in that. And I'm not entirely certain, again, I haven't gotten an explanation as to why that is.
Sure, this is you see the different kind of attitudes that, Governor Hobbs and Attorney General Mays have, particularly towards the Trump administration, kind of on full display here. And this is obviously more of an issue for legislative Republicans, but more kind of the Trump administration as a proxy as well, that, Mays is made herself the face of the Democratic resistance, and Hobbs is the, picking and choosing her fights, much more cautiously and trying to find places where she says, hey, I agree with the administration here, but not here. And she was fairly forceful about it yesterday, when she was calling on the president to release the $5.5 billion. But that was, obviously this is all kind of came to a head this week, and we hadn't heard much about it from the ninth floor, prior to that.
Yeah, anything she can do, I mean, sort of calling in the National Guard, which I think some states are talking about, or if they're not doing, anything else she can do?
No, I mean, I think she did mention potentially doing that to help out at the food banks if they need extra help, but no, I mean, there's just not that much money around that she can play with on her own. For a long time, governors had all that extra COVID money, and they were able to kind of hit their priorities without the legislature. But as we're seeing, that money is almost entirely gone.
Sure, the governor was asked about an emergency declaration, and she kind of pointed out that all that really does is kind of free up funding, and if there's no funding to tap into, then there's not a lot of point to doing that.
Last point of the rainy day fund, Jim. How much is in there? It's like 1.something billion.
1.6 billion, I think, roughly. It's as full as it can be right now.
Okay, and what is it for?
It is to help the state bridge economic downturns, typically in the budget, to bridge gaps in funding for whatever the legislature and the governor decide to spend it on. I know that they do see a lot of potential needs for that money coming down the pike here with all of the cuts that Congress has enacted and the Trump administration is pushing forward. Those are going to be pushed off onto the states. But at the same time, you do have that pot of money sitting there, and it's, again, for PR purposes, I don't know what the harm is in demanding Republicans do something with it.
Well, I know people will get Snap will probably say it's raining right now. Grab an umbrella, because here we go. All right, grab an umbrella. Here we go as far as a Republican primary in David Schweikert's district. Gina Swoboda seems to be the front runner. Certainly got a lot of attention, a Trump sort of thing endorsement. And this means the field is clear and all Republicans are happy with her, right?
Wrong. As we've seen many times with Gina Swoboda, she's kind of in this ongoing fight with the far right wing of her party, led by Turning Point folks and Senator Jake Hoffman and Freedom Caucus. They just really don't like each other for a variety of reasons we've talked about on this show. And even though Swoboda announced with the Trump endorsement, Hoffman and co. came out swinging against her immediately, claiming she's not the best candidate for the job.
What's going on here, Jeremy?
Well, there's two fights here kind of involving. So one is over, CD1 and whether, Turning Point and the Freedom Caucus and those folks are going to find another candidate, which I'm sure they're out looking for. We've heard, Tyler Boyer from Turning Point kind of put it on Twitter, like, hey, you thought about switching districts to run here? But then the other fight we were hearing a lot more about this week was what happens with the Arizona Republican Party, because it's very unusual that a sitting chair of a state political party would announce for a congressional run, but not resign. Swoboda says she's going to stick around until January and let the state committee pick a replacement, which Senator Hoffman and her other enemies within the party were not happy about it at all. They want her out of there immediately. They wanted her out a few months ago. If you recall, they tried to kind of force her out. They're accusing her now of suppressing the vote of the state committee because the meeting's up in Prescott Valley. It's a state party, and these meetings get moved around, the state sometimes. So there's a couple of fights here and there. I'm sure, maybe we'll see a couple more pop up because these people are not going to get any happier with her. And I think, they're going to continue looking for someone to oppose her in the primary.
Jim, the language here is pretty strong here. Turning Point, conservatives played by her are, quote, very, very stupid. We had a lawmaker saying to clean the Arizona swamp by taking out the trash in CD1. That's not good.
It's not, and I do kind of question the utility of calling people who you want to support your candidates very, very stupid. I don't know if in kind of the campaigning handbook if that's really the best move, but yeah, I mean this is all indicative of this intra-party fight, and I think all of us here have covered Republican Party intra-party fights and Democratic Party fights, and over the years, and this is the latest iteration of it. I mean, I think, to Jeremy's point, I think it is very unusual that she is remaining chair of the party as she is an active candidate. One can only surmise that the reason to do that is because she doesn't like the vice chair who would be elevated into becoming the chairperson, right? I mean, because that's what would happen, and if she felt comfortable turning the reins of the party over to that person, then I think we would have seen her resign. And so, I think the pretty obvious takeaway is that she does not think that person is someone who should be in charge of the party. So that's understandably going to upset a lot of people who, who do support her, and or on the flip side also that opposed Gina Swoboda.
And we got names. I know Todd Graham, Sean Noble, Matt Gress. We got all these names out there. Are they going to go ahead and run and make a serious campaign out of it? And is Donald Trump going to go ahead and endorse all of them?
These are all good questions that we've been asking. Yeah, it was actually really surprising after David Schweikert announced he was not going to run for re-election to run for governor that we thought, we had all these names, and we thought these people are going to jump in. It's going to be a feeding frenzy like it was with Abe Hamadeh and co. and CD8 last year, but it has not. There's been a lot of rumor, a lot of people saying, I'm thinking about it, but Swoboda was the first real big name to jump in, and jumping in with the Trump endorsement, as tepid as it was via quote posted to Twitter, it's a big swing, and probably has a couple of these folks thinking twice. A lot of these folks could run for re-election in their state legislative races. So now they have to think, do I really want to go against a Trump-endorsed person, get into that fray, or do I just want to maybe hang out in the legislature a little longer?
Sure, and what's interesting, we have really radio silence from some of these prospective candidates. Sean Noble has come out, and he's very openly said to the media that, yes, he's considering it, he's going to be making a decision on that. Everyone else is, you can't even get these folks to return a phone call. No one wants to actually say anything. Matt Gress has not commented on this in a while. Joseph Chaplik, he was considering it, another state representative, someone more aligned with, he's a member of the Freedom Caucus, someone who could get that kind of support. But maybe folks are trying to figure out if maybe he could get a Trump endorsement too. I mean, ask Karen Taylor Robeson. Just because you got the endorsement doesn't mean you're the only one in the race with one.
Yeah, Jim, CD5 seems a little bit different here. Mark Lamb, the minute he announced, he's kind of king of the hill, isn't he?
Yeah, I think definitely is the kind of the biggest fish in that pond for right now. Former Pinal County Sheriff, carries some weight within Republican and conservative circles in Arizona, and also nationally has a bit of a national profile. So the other folks that were in that race are some of them are people that people who, if you closely follow Arizona politics, you know who they are, former lawmakers and people active in kind of local conservative politics. But Sheriff Lamb is easily the biggest name, and I think kind of enters into that race right now, at least, as the front runner.
What do you think, Wayne? You got Travis Grantham, you got Jay Feely, Daniel Keenan. Apparently, these are names that some are familiar, some not, some familiar for different reasons. I mean, are they going to stick around, do you think? They're going to make this interesting?
I think Jay Feely is still an interesting name to me. Former NFL, he was a kicker, not the most high-profile position, but he also did announcing for college and stuff, so he has a name that people know, and he is buddies with the president. A lot of golfing photos with the president's son, so that's someone who could sneak in there and get the Trump endorsement. As Jeremy mentioned, Trump endorsement isn't what it used to be in Republican primaries, given that he might double endorse and back multiple candidates. But he is someone I wouldn't count out, just given those connections to the president.
Does he get hurt at all in the Republican primary again here, which is basically the whole deal there in CD5? Does he get hurt at all for going against Kari Lake?
Probably not. I think his, Mark Lamb, his reputation within, among primary voters, especially folks more on the right, it's very good. He has kind of a celebrity persona in that world, very recognizable with his, cowboy hat and flak jacket and all that. He's a lot of cable news appearances announced on the Charlie Kirk show. So he does have kind of that aura within that world. So I don't think folks are going to remember as much about, the people who, him being someone who went against Carrie Lake, and that was not the most energetic of primaries. There was never really in question. Also, his campaign mentioned to me that when I spoke with him earlier this week, they say he won that district in that primary, which is a primary that was not particularly close. So that, if I haven't seen the actual numbers, I think they said about 8 percentage points. So that would bode pretty well for him in general in that district, which is 20-25% Pinal County.
Yeah, so basically between CD5 and CD1, on the Republican side, Jim, at CD1, the intrigue is far deeper.
Yeah, it is. And I think really it all centers around, is the Turning Point USA faction, are they going to be able to recruit a credible candidate to run in that race that they can put up against a Trump-endorsed chairperson of the Republican Party?
And someone that they have to think that the Republican Party and Republican voters have to think could win a general election. You go too far to the right and that district's not going to go for it.
Republican voters care about that?
Yeah.
When did that begin? Because that is not what we've seen over the last decade.
I'm speaking theoretically here.
I will say CD1, though, is probably, of all the districts, the one that mirrors Arizona as a state most closely in terms of how its voting patterns. It voted, actually, I believe, against Donald Trump in 2020, and then he won it in 2024, but by less of a margin than he won statewide. So it is a Republican-leaning competitive district, but it has a lot of those more Chamber of Commerce type Republicans that have voted for Democrats in the past.
Yeah, we have seen one high-ranking figure over at Turning Point trying to persuade someone to switch races.
Jay Feely,
Tyler Boyd trying to tweeting that, hey, Jay Feely, you'd be a great candidate in CD1. Have you considered maybe switching? Now, Feely's campaign tells me no, that they haven't considered their staying put. So right now it looks like kind of a lot of candidates in that race, but probably a four-way primary in CD5 with, if you include Daniel Keenan, who's really unknown, but he put, I think, $925,000 of his own money into his campaign account. So
that'll get you known.
That'll at least get you people to remember your name this far out.
Jim, the Department of Education wants revisions to teaching standards, DEI. We're back to the DEI thing again. And the Board of Education, not amused, denied the request. What's going on?
Yeah, basically, Tom Horn, who has been involved in kind of any sort of push within Arizona to get rid of what we now refer to as DEI, but before some just racially sensitive teaching and things like that. Ethnic studies programs. Tom Horn really kind of cut his teeth 15, 20 years ago on trying to get rid of those programs. This is the latest version of it. Obviously the Trump administration has put out some executive orders that threaten to take away funding for schools and educational opportunities that involve diversity education and inclusion education. And so he went to the State Board of Ed and said, we need to change this. We need to strip this out. We're at risk of losing, I don't know, it was like $900 billion or something like that, like a ton of money. And the State Board of Education, he's not a voting member of the board. He's on the board but can't vote. And the State Board of Education rejected this push that he was making and said, well, we'll come back and we'll look at it again later in the year.
Has he got a point, though? I mean, $866 million, is that what we're talking about here in federal funding? He says it could be in jeopardy. And you know how the administration feels about DEI.
Yeah, and there is an executive order targeting this kind of thing. There's some question about whether it would defund the specific programs that are funded that cross whatever line the administration is trying to get rid of, or whether it would hit the entire state funding or federal funding for our education. Additionally, there's a court order right now blocking that most of that executive order, and I think that's why the state board was like, we're not in as much of a hurry as the superintendent to do this. Let's take our time. Let's be thoughtful about this, because it's not like you just want to control F the teaching standards for equity and then just delete it, which in some cases seems like what the superintendent wants to do.
Yeah, the board I think wants some time to kind of look at this and say, okay, are these things that actually need to go? Some of these things are issues that you would look at and say, okay, this is going to be a red flag for the Trump administration, for folks who are trying to root out DEI, like celebrating diversity in language like that. But then there's things like engaging students directly and equitably, where it's like, okay, is this because the word equitably is in there, does that actually make it part of diversity, equity, and inclusion? Or being respectful of people's cultures, culturally respectful communication, or however it was phrased, is that DEI, or is that just a little bit more common sense? And is there a gray area? Is one person going to look at that and say, I'm going to interpret it this way, and one look at it this way? That's
Jim, does this make him more attractive in the Republican primary for him to keep his job?
I think it's another thing for him to point to, certainly. Again, a lot of his career, his political career, especially in the education arena, has revolved around things like this, and this is, the latest version. I think when he got elected a few years ago, I mean, it was critical race theory, right? Was the big buzzword in the Republican primaries, and in the elections, and DEI is now has supplanted that as kind of the new boogeyman here, and so yeah, I mean it'll help, but I think the race is going to be about a lot more than just that. It's going to be about personalities. It's going to be about vouchers. It's going to be there's a whole mess of things, I think, that are going to be, the candidates are going to try to be appealing to Republican voters with him and Kimberly Yee, the state treasurer.
Impact on that primary. What do you think?
I think, again, I tend to agree with Jim that it's going to be a part of it, but ultimately, I don't know how big of a role. I think the ESA thing is going to be a much bigger role, which is why that's kind of how the Turning Point Wing launched Kim Yee into the race on that. I just think so many students and so many parents have opted into that program, especially from Republicans, that they're more concerned about how that program is going to be managed, how that money's being spent, than the DEI thing. It is a good buzzword, and I think it brings some attention to the campaign, but ultimately I think there's going to be a host of issues.
You had enough time for a yay or nay. Does it impact the race?
Maybe a little bit. I mean, it'll be part of the body of work that Tom Horne is going to present to primary voters, something that'll appeal to primary voters, but there's a lot of other factors as well. And we'll have to see how the ESA stuff plays, because he has been very pro-ESA throughout his career, and there is Kim Yee is trying to say he's not pro-ESA enough.
All right, panel, good to have you all here. Thanks for joining us. That's it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great weekend.